So we have another amazing speaker coming up next. So before that, I would like to know that do you play it cool like Dhoni, or does a fiery Kohli suit your style better? What is it from David that a future leader like you can learn? MDI Gurgaon and MarQConnect 2020 is privileged to host Mr. Samar Singh Sheikhawat as the next speaker, who will be taking us on a very insightful journey of leadership lessons from the sports world. Mr. Sheikhawat is an independent business consultant, startup advisor, professional public speaker, and former CMO of United Breweries Limited. As someone who has been a sportsman all his life, has worked with legendary players and teams like Royal Challengers Bangalore, and Force India F1, sorry guys, to name a few, as well as with companies and brands that have very deep associations with sport. Mr. Sheikhawat's approach to life and leadership has been largely shaped by sports. So guys, it's time to tie your laces, because he's going to take you out in a very wonderful ride. So sir, thank you for taking some time out. We would like to present with the symbol of health, a bamboo plant to you. Sir, the stage is all yours.
You guys hear me? Is that my usual baritone, or is it the mic? Not sure. Is the mic working? I don't think so. Tell when it's okay, can you hear me now? Okay, great. Thank you. I hope you guys will clap after I finish speaking as well. Unlike Virginia, by the way, did any of you ask why she's named Virginia? Because she was born in Virginia, by the way. And unlike her, I'm an old guy, so I need notes. I turn 55 tomorrow. Thank you in advance. I did my MBA in 1989. I'll let that sink in. I called my father and I said, you know, congratulations, your son has become an MBA. And he said, don't worry, you can succeed despite that. Naturally, I was very upset, and I said, you know, in our time we studied American management, and I said, have you heard of Westinghouse and General Electric and Sears Roebuck, etc.? He says, no, but when you come home on the holidays, I have something I want to show you. My father was a tea plant. I was born and brought up in the tea gardens in Assam. And when I went home, he took me to the factory, and he took me for a tour around the factory, and all the equipment there was all Westinghouse and General Electric. To think that 200 years ago, the English, Irish, Canadian, and Scots came into Assam, cleared out thousands of acres of land, and planted tea, and put up these factories, including 5-cylinder, 200 horsepower Blackstone engines. I'm not an engineer, disclaimer. And here I was with my newly acquired knowledge, thinking that it was indeed new. So that was a rude sort of wake-up call for me, that the knowledge that I thought was new was actually already existing in the world. So you know what? Congratulations, all of you studied in one of the finest management institutes in the country. Look to your left and right. It is highly likely that the person who's sitting on either side of you, you did not know until you came here. Whether you choose to know them after you leave from here is entirely up to you. This is also the shortest period of time that you would be spending in an educational institution, right? Typically in school, or if you're engineers, college, you know, is 4 years. You know, a regular bachelor's degree is 3 years. Medicine takes 5 years. And it is more than likely that you spend 6-7 years in the same school. From here, some of you will go on to work for large multinational corporations. Some of you will work for Indian companies. Some of you may start up your own ventures. Some of you may go back to, as they say in the South, to my native and do something of my own. And some of you will actually be happy. So you made it here. For everyone that is sitting here, there are 10 who tried and did not make it. And that is the responsibility on you, right? But I want to tell you a story and caution you against getting what's called a swollen head. Because, and I'll tell you two stories. One is mine and one is my daughter. This is a family enterprise. Okay. So my story is I used to play basketball for India, under 19. When I played for school, I was one of the best players in school, probably the best player in school. Then I played for Delhi State and there were 2 or 3 players better than me. Then I played for college and there were 4 or 5 players better than me. And then I played combined universities and there were 7 or 8 players better than me. And then when I went for the India camp, there were about 40, 50 players better than me. I couldn't make the final team. I went, in the sense I didn't get a game because I wasn't good enough to be in the playing 5 or even the playing 10. So I was in the reserves. But in school, I was the best player in my school. Story number 1, big fish in a little pond. Or as Virginia would have told you, BMOC. In America, they have a concept of BMOC, big man on campus. Should probably be big woman on campus to be politically correct today. The second story is that of my daughters. My daughter is a singer, and she was also very good at studies, which means she takes after her mother because I have no such qualifications. But she decided to, and she's been singing forever, and she's been writing and composing music, and she's very, very good, prodigious talent, and finally got into a college called the Berklee College of Music in Boston, which is the world's #1 music college. And she's a singer, and through her career, she literally won gold medals wherever she participated. And by her own admission, she is now amongst 4,000 of the most talented musicians in the world. So let me give an example. John Mayer is a Berklee alumnus. Sofia Boutella, have you anyone seen the movie The Mummy with Tom Cruise? The girl who's the mummy? Or in Kingsman, the girl on the blades? She's Sofia Boutella. She's a Berklee alumnus. So by her own admission, she's about average out there. She's improving. So that's what I want to caution you against. When you step out from the hallowed precincts of this beautiful institute and this wonderful campus, you are competing against the best in the world. You're competing against people from Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Tuck, Princeton, Dartmouth, Oxford, also all the IITs and IIMs. So your journey has just started. Don't rest on these laurels. I just finished reading a book called Legacy by James Kerr, K-E-R-R. I would highly recommend all of you read it. It's the story of the New Zealand Rugby All Blacks national team, which is the most successful sporting franchise in history. They have won 75% of their matches in their last 100 years. That's a track record that is unparalleled in the history of any sport. And you know what they say, when you wear a Rugby All Blacks jersey, and the New Zealand cricket team also wears black, they have a silver fern on their sleeve. That's the national symbol. And there's a story around the fern, but I will tell that to you later. But when you wear a Rugby All Blacks jersey, you don't wear it for yourself. You don't wear it for your teammates. You don't even wear it to defeat the opposition, although that is obviously the objective. You wear it for everyone who's worn it before you, and you wear it for everyone who's going to wear it after you, including those who are not born as yet. That is the mindset of the rugby team. They are double world champions. In fact, they lost this world championship. England, they lost in the quarters or semis. England won this. But they were 2-time world champion before that. Now, how can you beat a team that gets onto the field with that vision and that spirit, saying that we are here today? Imagine Virat Kohli saying, I am here playing for Tendulkar, for Gavaskar, for Kapil Dev, for Vijay Hazare, for C.K. Naidu, for Vijay Merchant, for Vinu Mankad, for everyone. And I'm also playing for people who will play for India, who have not been born as yet. That's the legacy that you people at MDI Gurgaon have. How old is the institute? 25 years old? You are here for everyone who ever graduated from here. You are here for people who will graduate from here, people who are not born as yet. That is your legacy. That is your responsibility. You do something great in the world, obviously you benefit from that. Your families will benefit. Your institute will benefit. The reverse also holds true. Because as Spider-Man said, with great power, except my daughter says with great power comes great electricity bill. But that's the difference. So that was my opening remarks. I'm going to tell you a lot of stories today, largely sports stories, so no boring presentations, no sort of academic discourse, and we are happy to, ask questions. Where's Soradeep? Am I the last speaker for the day? Oh, there's one more. So I'm not sure how much time I have, but 1 hour is what I was given. The rest of my talk has two sections. One is business trends that I believe will be relevant in the next 10, 15, 20 years that will largely impact your generation. And then certain life and leadership lessons from the corporate and sports world that have affected me. So I think the first thing that will manifest itself is truth in advertising, in communication of any kind, in the political field, in the business field, or even in the sports field, anywhere. Because that big boy burger that you see on television really doesn't look so great in real life, does it? You see that ad for that car, the Honda Jazz or something, where it's driving on roads and it's actually larger than the city in which it's driving, which means it's probably a really small car. So I think the days of exaggeration, and your generation is going to drive that, because you say, as they shout out and call out something that is perhaps not true. So truth in advertising is the first thing that will happen. The second one, which is already happening, is brands with a purpose. A purpose beyond just making money. Your generation demands, what are you doing, let's say, beyond making money and selling a brilliant product or a service. What are you doing for the environment? What are you doing for sustainability? What are you doing for equal opportunity? What are you doing for LGBTQAI+? I learned that from my daughter in Boston. It's a liberal arts college, and Massachusetts has got marijuana as legal. I mean, it's consumed here as well, but it's not legal. Right? So what are you doing for women? What are you doing for disadvantaged sections of society? How are you giving back to the community? You heard Virginia a little earlier talk about issues that she feels very strongly about. So brands with a purpose, and it's already happening. For those who are interested in the marketing majors, the official term is called woke brands, W-O-K-E, matlab ut gaye, woken up. And some brands do it well and some brands do it disastrously. And let me give you examples of both. Tata Tea Jagore, I think, is a good example of a brand that does it well. First of all, tea is supposed to wake you up. So it fits in with that basic premise. And then the whole thing of honesty and straightforwardness and waking up to the new reality of India, or the new world, is Tata Tea's Jagore campaign, which did really well for them as far as business results are concerned, and also as far as advertising awards are concerned, or marketing awards are concerned. Another one is Havells, Hawa Badalegi. Because when you switch on a fan, I mean, what does a fan do? It just circulates the air that is already existing in the room. It doesn't create air. But they could ostensibly take a position of Hawa Badalegi, so no cash payments, please pay by check, no bribes, etc., etc. Sometimes you can, so that again did well on business results as well as, advertising and marketing awards. Let me give an example that didn't do so well. Some of you have seen the Tanishq ad, where this dark-skinned woman who already has a child is getting married a second time. Now, several taboos. Number one is dark skin in India. Sabko gori bahuein chahiye, right? So they were breaking that taboo, or they were addressing that taboo. The second one, the woman is already married. Maybe a divorcee, maybe widowed, maybe separated. Second taboo. The third taboo, she had a child from a previous marriage. And if you remember the ad, she's doing the peras around the fire with her new husband, and her child runs onto where the altar is and says, I also want to be part of the pera. Moment of silence, and the husband gets up, picks up the child, and they take the peras together. Absolutely brilliant ad. You'll cry, it tugs to your heartstrings. Won every possible marketing and advertising award there. You know what it did for sales? Nil bata shunya. Zero. It did absolutely nothing for sales. I don't want to go into the reasons why. So brands can get it disastrously wrong. Pepsi with Kendall Jenner, where the CEO had to apologize and had to pull the ad. Riots when this happened around Brexit. So they thought they'll take it, put this whole. So the approach was, let's bring world peace. Pepsi brings the world together. And Kendall Jenner comes out in the middle of these riots and basically offers Pepsi to everyone. They drink Pepsi, they're happy, they forget all the differences. It was serving platitudes. And they obviously, Europe is deeply riven with so many different countries, and within each country, different factions and sections, apart from political ideologies. And the whole criticism was, do you think the world's problems can be solved just by a soft drink? On the other hand, Heineken, which I was a part of for 9 years, did a campaign that was very successful overseas and to a lesser extent in India because it didn't get much play, called Generations Apart. It was manifested as Generations Apart. Overseas, it was Worlds Apart. So, for instance, they put in a lesbian woman with a man who hated lesbians. And it's actually unscripted. There are no actors in that. I would urge you to all see it, and how over a period of half an hour of talking, and they put them into a, let's say, a task together. Both of you have to build, let's say, this table or a bar. And if you can build this bar, you can sit and share a Heineken together. Extremely successful campaign. Very risky, but very successful. So, you know, brands with a purpose is great, but it can, it needs to tie in very closely with your business objective. Very, very closely. And it needs to be executed in a manner that doesn't take extreme stances, because that's what the world has become. But anyway, brands with a purpose. The third one is possessions versus experience. Your generation is all about experience and not about possessions. You know, when I was at UB, we sponsored Sunburn for 10 years. I mean, from the beginning. I was there for 10 years almost. And I could never understand. First of all, I don't understand this EDM. Electronic dance music, 40 beats per minute, 80 beats per minute, 120 beats per minute. But fortunately, I have younger, brighter kids in my team who did understand it. And I could never understand why we're spending crores. And it was not just the year-ending event in Goa. It was the entire calendar from August downwards. And there are people like, names like Dead Mouse and, you know, David Guetta. And for some reason, the top 5 DJs are all Dutch. You know, I don't know why. So Armin van Buren and all sorts of names. Until one day when I was there, and there was this big muscular guy with Indian chap with tattoos and earrings and stuff and a vest and all in front of the gate, and he's posing. So I realized, I said, it's that whole Instagram moment. Is that I was there. You know, and we get some 100,000 people over 3 days. I'm not complaining as long as they drink my beer. But that it was the experience of being there. Your generation will buy private labels so that they can save money for a bungee jumping trip to New Zealand, or for, let's say, a backpacking trip across Europe, or to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, or frankly even walking in the Kudremukh iron ore mines. It's experience over possessions. You people will live 5 years in a house with rented furniture. You're not learning how to drive anymore because between Uber, Ola and the metro, I don't need to. Also, why would I invest in an asset that depreciates 40% in the first year, apart from road tax, insurance, licensing, maintenance, servicing, everything? Which is why there are 50,000 crores worth of automobiles lying unsold in this country. You're not buying houses anymore, which is why there are 450,000 flats lying vacant in this country. So how changing consumer behavior can throw existing industries out of existence and create completely new industries. My favorite example is of cloth napkins. Nobody uses cloth napkins anymore. Neither clubs, nor even five-star hotels. Even there they'll give you paper napkins, maybe better quality paper, or maybe the expandable ones, you know, where you put water and they expand. But imagine if you're Bombay dyeing and you're manufacturing cloth napkins, what are you going to do? Paper is more versatile, it's cheaper, it's disposable. I can wipe my face, the laptop, the floor, you know, even the monitor. I can't do any of that I can't do all of that with a cloth napkin. When you guys go into buy a Zara product, by the way, the original pronunciation of Zara is not Z-A-R-A. That's because the original Spanish is T-S-A-D-A. It's Zara. But it's very difficult to pronounce, so it became Zara. That's how the brand was developed. But today, when you buy a Zara product, I don't know whether you know, because they haven't talked about it in India, all the products are made by disadvantaged sections of society. Widows, victims of child sex trafficking, war widows, orphans, and that money goes into there. So every time, if you didn't know that, you know it today. For your generation, that means a lot. The fourth one is environment and sustainability. Then my favorite example is of a place called Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu, where Vedanta, of Anil Agarwal fame, has a copper smelting unit, which has been leaching harmful chemicals into the water supply system for the last 25 years and causing cancer in the communities that live within. And about 5 years ago, citizens protested. There was a gherao of the plant. The police was called in, Section 144 was promulgated. The police fired and 13 civilians lost their lives. Now imagine if you're the PR manager of Vedanta. What a bloody nightmare. Or you're the general manager of that works, of the plant there. Long story short, the plant is still shut. It's been 5 years. The case is lying at the Supreme Court. And that was responsible for 2,500 crores of Vedanta's EBITDA. Any BCom graduates here? Very few. No one. Oh, one lonely man, the Lone Ranger. Double entry bookkeeping, you know, EBITDA. There are 2,500 crore impact on the bottom line. Even today, that has not opened. And I'm not even getting into Greta Thunberg versus Donald Trump, right? But the environment and sustainability are definitely going to be very, very key going ahead, because let's face it, is our generation the environment. It did. But everything is relevant and contextual, because at that time, you were coming out from a nation, from a mindset of scarcity. Think about our parents. My mother, when she has a bath, she first washes the bathroom, then has a bath, then washes the bathroom again. Now she's managed to stop doing that, but just something that was abundantly available at the time, water. You know, so every time now, in fact, when I go to 5-star hotels, I actually tell people, please don't pour water for me until I ask for it. Because if you poured it, even if I don't drink a sip of it, when I leave from here, you're going to take it and throw it away. I've done the same thing in my home. So I'm sure all of us can sort of, you know, because really the wars of the future are going to be water wars. Political and religious intolerance. And this impacts businesses. Imagine if you're working for a Chinese company that gets a lot of its revenue from exporting into America. One day Donald Trump slaps $300 billion worth, that's the exact number, of sanctions on Chinese products into India. Maybe you lose your job because your product is uncompetitive and it's not selling anymore, right? Political and religious intolerance. In our time, when you voted for a politician, you made fun of that politician regardless of whether you voted for him or her or not. In today's times, I am seeing people who've been friends for 30, 40, 50 years blocking each other, refusing to talk to each other because either you're for the government or against the government. Here's the funny thing, the guy that you're fighting about don't even know you exist. So it's like Begani Shadi mein Abdullah Diwana. That's what it is, right? But it is affecting relationships. And it is affecting businesses because people are being forced to take a stand. Businesses are being forced to take a stand to clarify where they stand. The most famous example is of Nike with Colin Kaepernick. Anyone heard of that? So Colin Kaepernick is a supremely talented African-American athlete who was a Nike brand ambassador for many, many years. But one day he decided to take a knee, as they say in America, where he kneeled when the American national anthem was being played at a football game. That so incensed President Donald Trump that he called up the owners of the team that he played for and told him to fire him. And he called up all the federations, the NFL, the National Football League in America, and told him, you will not give this boy a job because he is disrespecting our veterans and our armed forces by kneeling. On the other hand, there was a left, or there's a liberal field that said, you know what, Black Lives Matter, and he's protesting violence against blacks. By the way, I can't even say blacks, I have to say African Americans or something like that. But then Nike decided to put him on the cover of Sports Illustrated magazine. And that immediately polarized their consumers. So all the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males had hashtag boycott Nike trending on Twitter within 2 hours. And that reached several million. But all the black boys, all the brothers, all the dogs, they just loved it. And they started their own movement, and that number was much larger than the movement against it. Do you think Nike actually gives a shit about politics? It's a pure marketing decision. You think Phil Knight, incidentally, you must read his book, Shoe Dog. It's his autobiography. It's absolutely brilliant. He's a rock star. You think Phil Knight woke up one morning and said, this is what we're going to do? This was debated, and so many scenarios and simulations and modeling, as they would do in the armed forces, were all done to determine what will be the political fallout and what will be the gain and what will be the negatives. And then next, we will still gain. Because more people will buy our shoes because our community is largely, our consumers are largely black. Not so much white. It was a marketing decision. For God's sake, don't fall into the tricks and pranks that brands play on you. Buy the shoe if you like it. Don't buy it if you don't like the shoe. not because they did or did not put Colin Kaepernick on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So don't let brands manipulate your thinking. And I didn't want to say that in front of Virginia because LinkedIn is one of the brands that, you know, has a lot of information on us. They do. They do, I promise you. Do you know, I would recommend all of you, I very strongly recommend, you watch a documentary on Netflix called The Great Hack. How many of you have seen it? Not enough hands, frankly. It's about the story of Cambridge Analytica. And then you will wonder about the digital footprint that you leave. Do you know, before the US election, they had 5,000 data points on each voter. 5,000. If I locked any of you up in a room for a month and said, write 5,000 things about yourself, you will struggle. They had 5,000 data points. When Donald Trump got elected, they had a party saying, we put Donald Trump in the White House. Andrew Bosworth, the chief product officer of Facebook, 2 weeks ago said, we inadvertently put Donald Trump into the White House. So if you want to have fun, you mess with Facebook, just like the pro-right as well as the pro-left posts that you get, and just see how the algorithm, you know, it's like the classic coder's revenge against the testers, right? You just see how the algorithm messes itself up. Because remember, they will feed you the information that they think you like because of what you liked in the past. And they're not controlling you. Where is your independent thought process gone? I will not repeat what Colonel Saab here told me about Kashmir, but it was so refreshing to hear the actual reality from ground versus what the Times of India says, versus what the government says, versus what the Shaheen Bagh protesters say, versus what, you know, actually is the narrative coming out, let's say, from across our borders, right? So my own submission is, you are growing up in a time, which brings me to my next point, news versus fake news, as Donald Trump would say. See, I don't work for anyone, so I don't give a shit, right? I work for myself, so I can say what I want. But that's the reality. In our times, when you saw something, you know, when Preeti here, my associate, will tell you, when we used to go to see a movie, we had newsreels that would show us the news of the week, where you saw Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi and all the prime ministers and stuff. Today, I know what Amitabh Bachchan had for breakfast. You know, so somewhere it takes away the mystique of that personality as well. But if I show you a desert and burning, and an explosion and burning oil rig, and I say this is from Jordan yesterday, how do you know it's not from Kuwait, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 month ago? Yes, there are sites like Snopes and other stuff that help you verify fact checks, but how do you know? You just don't know. That's number one. Number two, every media outfit is owned by some business establishment that has their own agenda to drive. What do you do? In our time, things were simpler. What you saw on television was by and large true. What you saw, read in the papers was by and large true, because we didn't have deep fake videos. Today, you can have Barack Obama saying anything. I can have anyone saying anything, and there's no way you can make out. So I don't know what to do from a technical solution standpoint. The only advice I can give you is, number one, do not abandon your common sense. Number two, the only truths in your lives are your life's own experiences, not what anybody else tells you. Did your father get you or your mother get you into MDI Gurgaon? No. You can't control anyone else's destiny, but you can only trust your life's own experience. That's the only truth in your life. I have lived 27 years of my life in Delhi. It's supposed to be the most violent city in the country. I have personally never seen or experienced a moment of violence, and I did all my school and college from Delhi. I worked 12 years in Delhi, with 6 with Pepsi and 5 with Dabur and 1 year with Energizer. Does that mean violence does not happen in Delhi? No. I live in Bangalore, which is supposed to be extremely secular and very peaceful. I've seen more violence in Bangalore than I have in Delhi. So what are you going to trust, the statistics or your life's own experiences? I don't need the answer, I'm just putting the questions in your head. The new divide is not between the rich and the poor. It's not between the haves and the have-nots. It's between the open and the closed. The open-minded versus the closed-minded. That's where the new divide is. And you see the rise of the right wing across the world. It impacts business. From Donald Trump in the US to he who shall not be named in India, to Duterte in the Philippines, Erdogan in Turkey, Marine Le Pen in France, Brexit in the UK, Greece, Egypt, everywhere across the world. China, Vladimir Putin, the biggest stud on the planet, whose rebels can blow passenger jets out of the sky, and nobody can say anything because he has Donald Trump by the short and curlies. I don't think they're ever going to invite me back for a lecture here again with the kind of language I use. But so remember that. So news, fake news, political, religious intolerance, these impact businesses. And remember, the tonality of your brand can never be influenced by your own private views on anything. If you look at the Kingfisher tonality, during the time that I was there, and even now, it's very young, vivacious, friendly, camaraderie, brotherhood, bonding driven, because that is what beer is all about. You cannot take, so for instance, I can't say save the Amazonian rainforest. It has absolutely nothing to do with my business. I can't say save the girl child. There's no relevance to my drinking. But yes, I can say because we use water to make beer, conserve water. And in our breweries, I used to run the CSR program for the communication of the CSR program for the United Breweries as well. We had primary health and primary education. I've inaugurated innumerable schools for the children of the people who work in our breweries, as well as in the communities within a 5-kilometer radius of our brewery. That still is allied to my business, right? So those are a couple of things that I wanted to say. Yeah, two more before I move to the last section of my talk. The Me Too movement. So when this Me Too movement started, I had put up a post on various social platforms saying, the sad part is, so there are two tragedies here. Number one, does this happen? Absolutely. Should the perpetrators be caught and given the maximum possible punishment under the law? Without question. Number two, will anything happen? No. And I got killed by all my wives' friends and all the liberals and leftists and say, you have a daughter yourself, how can you talk like this and stuff? Cut to 2 years later, Harvey Weinstein has paid $44 million to 11 women, $4 million each, who have all withdrawn the cases against him. Right? In India, do you want to know, having handled every celebrity and every cricketer that you can think of for the last 30 years, do you want me to tell you who paid how much money to whom to shut up? That was a trick question. Names that you have worshipped have paid that kind of money. Where is it gone? It's all gone. I'm being recorded, so I will not take names. But the biggest movie stars have all paid, the biggest, have all paid money. That's number one. Number two, what does Harvey Weinstein say? Of course I had sex with those women. It was consensual. Who's going to go back 30 years to decide whether it was or not? How can you prove either way? So the thing is, and what it does is it does a great disservice to the women who have actually gone through this terrible, terrible experience. And pardon my saying so, some of the women have also actually shot themselves in the foot by trivializing some of it. By, things that are really nowhere near as serious as that. Preeti will tell you, in her company, I won't tell you the name of the company, there's an office boy who had been sent to deliver a package somewhere, and he wanted to check a clarification with someone in HR in terms of, have I delivered this right package, etc., and called this girl from HR at 7 o'clock in the evening. The next morning, she filed a sexual harassment complaints against him, saying he's calling me at odd hours. Finally, they investigate, and she's part of the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Committee there. They did investigate. The guy was a semi-literate guy who was asking for directions, and the other people were not answering, and he called up this girl. And she, in her desire or haste, without, and so they asked, has he ever called you before? No. Does he have your number? Maybe he does. Does he work for you? Yes, he does. Had he gone there on official work? Yes, he did. Was he calling back regarding something official? Yes. How late was it? 7 o'clock. Finally, the case was thrown out. Now, what this does is the next time a woman in the same organization raises a more serious complaint, it gets seen in light of what has just transpired. So think about that before you decide to press the trigger. And the last one on my first section is, everything is driven today by technology. And it's the loneliest thing in the world. Recently, I just saw that, everyone's posting what I look like on LinkedIn. I saw Mark Ruffalo do it for the first time. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Tinder, right? So everyone's doing that now. But you know what? Everyone looks cooler on social media than they are in real life. They all have the same issues of acceptance, validation, insecurity than that all of us do. So don't let anyone else validate that for you. Everyone appears to be cooler than they are. They are no different from any one of you. And technology, because we live more in the damn phone. Now you see, I'm talking to you, there's nothing. Where is my phone? It's nowhere near me. It's not even on the stage. See Simon Sinek, what he says about phone usage. Suppose, you know, Sauradeep is talking to me and I'm this, let's assume this is my phone. Yeah, Sauradeep, what's up? Yeah, sure. Cool, yeah, no problem. Now what am I saying? The phone is more important to me than Sauradeep. Even if I say, yeah, sure, and if I just sort of put it back here, even then, or I've got this, I'm having lunch with Sauradeep and I've got this phone and someone calls and I say, I'm not going to take that. So magnanimous. Put the damn phone down and talk. I find today's youth, and I'm not pointing fingers at you, your skill sets in terms of dealing with people, a firm handshake, old world virtues, what they would teach you in the armed forces, for instance, you know, look into someone's eyes, talk to that person, be genuinely interested in that person. For instance, I know Pranav Langar is from Jammu. I had only a few seconds to talk to him. I know that Sauradeep is from Durgapur. I've been to Durgapur. It's a steel city. I put up a Spencer store there. I told him it reminded me a lot of Bhilai and Bokaro, and I didn't get to speak to him, but I've even been to the staff quarters of the employees who work in Durgapur steel plant. I will remember this all my life. That's a curse, by the way. But how would I know this if I didn't talk to him? So put the phone down, get interested in nature. You have such a beautiful campus. Can anyone tell me the name of more than 3 varieties of flowers that grow out here? More than 3 or 4 varieties of trees? Take an interest. If some of you want to be marketing people, you need to learn that. Colonel Verma here, I learned so much from him today, and I will never forget him. I have a very good memory because of all the things he told me. He's wearing an army shirt. It's called an Angora shirt. We made a conversation around that. Hopefully I connected with him in that. How many people would know? How many of you would be interested? The cab driver that drove me here, I know his name, which village he belongs to, how many children he has, how much money he has, how much he sends back, how much land he has, who handles that village, is he married or not, how many children does he have, what are his ambitions for his kids. We were in Goa, Preeti and I were in Goa on a work assignment, and we were at a German bakery having breakfast, and she can validate this, and our order was taking a really long time. And there were 4 men and 4 women and 8 children sitting at the table next to us, and I had a bet with her saying that I'll just observe them from 1 hour and I'll tell you who's married to whom and whose kids are whose. Purely from observation. No husband was sitting with any wife, no wife was sitting with any of the kids, but just through observation. You know, we travel a lot on work, and we're always saying, you know, if I see 2 girls, I'll say the sisters, friends, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, mother, daughter, and a boy and a girl, are they colleagues, are they related, are they married? It's just natural human curiosity. You need to be interested in people, and you need to read the body language, right? Or what is happening. And what are they doing, what are they saying? Like Dr. Jayesh Shah, who spoke earlier in the day, he was wearing a bandgala, a Nehru jacket, or bandi as we call it so is Colonel Verma, so is this gentleman out here. I'll remember these things, but how much are you noticing? That's the point. The 4 students who met me all have beards. I noticed that. You know, so you need to, and you can't do that if you're on the damn phone all day. We are the leading selfie death nation in the world. It's a bloody statistic that we should be ashamed of. You know, and I find today's youth with plugged in spectacles, backpack, and we fall off bridges, we fall off buildings, we fall off hills, we fall off everything. And then they're talking to 10 people at the same time. And I say, yeah, great talking to you, man. I said, but we didn't talk. We were like chatting and stuff. Yeah, but that's talking. I don't think so. Remember one thing, if 32 years of working in Indian, American, multinational, British, Dutch companies all over the world, I've lived and worked in Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Hyderabad, Madras, Bangalore. I visited each and every state in this country, and in many cases, multiple cities in that state. I've worked in the US, I worked in Western Europe, I worked in the Netherlands, Southeast Asia, Middle East, everywhere. There's one thing that I want to tell you. 80% of your success, whether on the armed forces or in politics or in sports or in the business world, is dependent on your people and man management and leadership skills. Really people skills. Only 15% is technical, 5% is what something says calls luck. But you know what they say in the army? I have 3 generations in the armed forces. My uncle, who was chief of naval staff, used to say, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. If you are prepared all the time, one day the opportunity will come. Otherwise you'll be saying like Akshay Kumar, uska bad luck bahut kharab hai yaar. Okay, so what this leads me to is this loneliness needs me to a dire need for leadership across the world and the country. And to illustrate the point, I will tell you a story. One of my favorite stories. You've all heard of a player called Shane Watson, Australian cricketer, who about 3 years ago was typically toward the end of his career. He was getting hammered all over the park. He was not scoring runs. And we used to run the RCB, so we got rid of him. And if I told you in 2017 that next year not only will Shane Watson play the IPL, but will also score the match-winning century in the finals for his new franchise, you would have laughed me out of the room. But that's exactly what happened. He didn't get bought in the first round, not in the second. He got bought in the third round by the Chennai Super Kings. And in the finals, in 2018, I'm not talking about 19, in the first 11 balls, he scored 0 runs. And if you saw his captain, he was just standing like this, without any expression on his face. In the next 40 balls, he scored 100 runs. And at the post-match presentation, when he was being given the man of the match, they said, what do you feel about it? He said, I'm just so grateful to be playing cricket again. Now, what changed in his life? Only one thing. His captain. The aura around, or the spirit of the team around, the environment around, made MS Dhoni, to my mind, the greatest cricket captain we've ever had. Because remember, today Virat may be more successful, but Virat has got a much better team than Dhoni did. We won't get into that, right? And if you ask Virat, he says, my bhai says, yeah, there's no one better than him. Only his captain changed. So leadership makes a very, very big difference. And then the transition of leadership, because this will happen to you in your lives. I think the only institution in this country where that is really planned and meticulously done is actually the armed forces and Hindustan Lever, the only 2 places. No other company, not even the government, not the bloody movies. I mean, can you imagine? I was telling Preeti on the drive here, are you telling me that for the next 30 years, I'll have to see Shah Rukh Khan's son, Sunny Deol's son, Jackie Shroff's son, and Anil Kapoor's son on screen for the next 30 years? Tushar Kapoor. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, it's the only field where, you know, you don't need any if Abhishek Bachchan's name was Abhishek Sharma, I guarantee you he would not have got a second film after R se kuch naam tha, his first film. Was that his first film? He would not have got a second film after that. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen like that in the corporate world. So look around you. Where are the leaders? Where are the leaders? They all seem to have feet of clay, whether it's in the business field or in the political field or anywhere. And the concept of leadership is changing. As Barack Obama very famously said, today nationalism means punching your chest and shouting loudly. That's not nationalism. On the other hand, you have the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, who got tremendous positive, you know, shall I say, feedback and goodwill across the world for her handling of New Zealand's political scenario and after the Christchurch shootings, you know, where she went and, you know, sort of prayed with the Muslims and said he was a white supremacist. He said, I will not publish his name. His name shall be erased from history so that nobody remembers him as a person. They remember the act, but they don't remember who he was, so that no one can make him a martyr. He's not remembered. Why was Osama bin Laden buried at sea? So that there's no martyr, there's no memorial that is possible to him. Sometimes you have to take these hard decisions. So, you know, what is leadership? It is relevant and contextual. And remember, if something is legal does not mean it is moral. Slavery in the United States was legal. Was it moral? No. But it was still legal. Apartheid in South Africa, we have an MA or BA in apartheid in political science, my colleague Preeti. But apartheid was legal? Was it moral? No. Racial discrimination, segregation, etc. was legal in many countries. You've read of Rosa Parks, who sat in the front of the bus in America during this, you know, movement for civil liberties. Remember, something is legal doesn't necessarily mean it's moral. I don't know why you're thinking about whether I'm talking about the CAA and NRC. I will not name it. It's up to you to decide. And remember, one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist. Until the lion learns how to write, history shall always glorify the hunter. Okay, enough gyan. I'm going to tell you some really exciting stories from the sports world and qualities that I believe you people need to inculcate to succeed in this world going ahead. You know, I'm not going to talk to you about technology and, you know, marketing and stuff, because that you're going to study and realize, you know, that 90% of what you learn in your MBA, you have to forget when you start working. But that aside, I used to have a Malayali professor who used to say, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. He was absolutely right. Abraham Lincoln, I don't know whether you know, Abraham Lincoln was the America wrestling champion. He won 400 bouts and lost only once in his life. He was a very big guy, 6'5". Did you know that about Abraham Lincoln? The most apparently peaceful, pacifist president that America had. But Abraham Lincoln, and this is a story you all know, said that if I had 4 hours to cut down 50 trees, I would spend the first 2.5 hours in sharpening my axe and making it the most magnificent tree cutting instrument that I own, and then I could easily cut those trees. So planning is the first one. You didn't do well in the exams, you'll think of 100 reasons. You know, I fell ill, my girlfriend broke up with me, मेरे चाचा के भतीजे का accident हो गया, you know, मेरी fees नहीं बढ़ी, मैं बीमार हो गया, you know, the teacher doesn't like me, the professor doesn't like me. All those things will happen because जो तुम हो वो हम थे और जो हम हैं वो तुम भी हो गए, right? But you will not admit to one thing, boss, मैंने पढ़ाई नहीं की. As simple as that. On the other hand, if you do well, are you going to think of 10 reasons why you did well? Will you say that the exam was very easy? या वही प्रश्न आए जो मैंने पढ़े थे? Or the professor likes me? You'll never say all that. Very slog, man, cracked it, maxed it. I mean, these are terms from my term. I don't know what your generation uses. Remember, defeat teaches you much more than victory. I'll come to that little later. So planning is the first one, right? The second one is courage. If you see a movie called The Guns of Navarone, which is a definitive war film from my time, there is a character called Andrea, who's a Greek giant, who was played by Anthony Quinn. And he's supposed to be really brave, and he kills men in single-handed combat with knives. And he meets a child at a village and says, Andrea is so brave. He said, no, Andrea is scared, that is why he's brave. If you're scared, you're alert. But courage is something, and I'm talking the kind of courage that the armed forces face on the borders, but there will be times when you will be scared. You will be afraid, you will be alone. That's absolutely all right. You know, there is nobody, including, and you can talk to Colonel Verma, who's not afraid in the face of death or failure or rejection or anything. The bad news is it will happen again and again to you. The good news is you're not alone. It happens to everyone. But I want to talk to you about 1989, when a 16-year-old boy walked onto the field to face two of the fastest, most fearsome fast bowlers of that generation, bowling at 90 miles an hour with reverse swing, Wasim Akram and Waqar Yunus. Sachin Tendulkar was 16 years old, and Wasim, I've heard the story from Wasim Bhai, I've heard it from Azharuddin, who was captain, and I've heard it from Navjot Sidhu. And they said, हमने बहुत सुना था ये सचिन कौन है, 16 साल का सुना था, लेकिन देखने में तो 12 साल का लग रहा था. And when he came, India was some 37 for 5, and I think the 4th or 5th ball from Waqar Yunus hit him straight on his face, and he collapsed on the pitch. There was blood on his face, blood on his shirt, blood on the pitch. And Navjot Sidhu says, I felt like throwing up, and I looked towards Azhar and said, shall we walk off? And he started walking off, and from behind he heard a small voice saying, मैं खेलेगा. And he turned around, and Sachin had wiped the blood off, and Sachin scored some 40 runs that day. 16-year-old boy facing two of the most fierce and fearsome fast bowlers, bowling at 90 miles an hour. Any cricket fans out here, if you put the bowling machine at 90, you can't see the ball. And when he was changing his dressing, his jersey in the dressing room, he had blue, black marks all over his body where he had been hit. So courage is something you need to have. Perseverance is the third one. This is one of my most favorite stories. A Sri Lankan cricketer called Marwan Attapattu, who was selected for Sri Lanka, and he scored in his first test 0 and 1. And he got dropped from the Sri Lankan national team for 4 years. He went back to Sri Lanka and scored tons of runs in domestic cricket, got selected again and scored 0 and 0. dropped again, went back to domestic cricket, another 4 years, scored thousands of runs in domestic cricket, and was selected a third time for Sri Lanka. And this time again he scored 0 and 0. Now he's been playing for 8 years. He's waiting for 8 years to score his second run in Test cricket. Can you imagine the number of times he must have thought, maybe I'm not meant to perform at the international level. Maybe I'm just good enough for the domestic level. How many times would he have thought that? Full credit to the Sri Lankan Cricket Board. They selected him a fourth time, but because another player called Roshan Mahanama got injured. And this time, he did not disappoint. He scored 16 centuries, 5 double centuries, 6,000 test runs, went on to captain Sri Lanka and retired as one of the most loved Sri Lankan cricket players. Marwan Attapattu. How many times in your life have you thought that I should give up when perhaps victory is just around the corner? Remember, victory very often does not come to the one most talented, but to the one who simply refused to give up. Through my life, I've been blessed to have met the greatest sportsmen in the world. And let me tell you, world number one, very, very often is not the most talented. He's just the hardest working. Rohit Sharma is more talented than Virat Kohli today. Only in the last 3-4 years is he really beginning to deliver on his talent. Vinod Kambli was more talented than Sachin Tendulkar. Snehashish Ganguly, Snehashish's daughter and my daughter studied together in Calcutta. He was more talented than Saurabh. Unfortunately, he was a middle order batsman, and the middle order was packed with people like Manjrekar and Vengsarkar and stuff, so he could never get a break. Ivan Lendl, world number one, not the most talented. Jim Courier, world number one, not the most talented. Stefan Edberg, Mats Wilander. Even today, Rafael Nadal is not as talented as Roger Federer, but he beats him more often than Roger Federer beats him. So victory comes very often to not to the person who's most talented, but to the one who simply refused to give up. Focus, very, very important. You know, some of you will come here and fall in love with colleagues, you know, and now that I think 377 has been decriminalized, anything is possible. And it's natural. Even in my batch, two couples fell in love, married, and are still together. I'm not going to say happily together because that's an oxymoron. But if you make that the focus of your being at this beautiful campus, I can almost guarantee you that you will fail. Think about why you're here. Why are your parents, or why are your education loan that you've taken paying, I don't know what, 21, 22 lakhs for an MBA, maybe less, maybe more. That's a lot of money. When I asked Mary Pierce, double French Open champion, women's tennis champion, I asked her, which I met her recently in Bangalore, who was the toughest opponent that you ever played against? Was it Steffi Graf or Gabriela Sabatini? These are names from my generation. And she said, you know, when I was on the court, I just played the yellow ball. I just played the yellow ball. It didn't matter who was at the other side. I knew I had to hit the ball one time more than the opponent. Hit it one time more and longer and harder than the opponent. When Virender Sehwag was making his debut against Pakistan, Shoaib Akhtar used to bowl at 100 miles an hour. And Sehwag, being the Najafgarh Jat that he is, someone asked him, "Yaar, tere ko dar nahi lagta? Shoaib Akhtar 100 mil par ball fenkta hai." So he says, "Main ball ko dekhta hu, bowler ko nahi." And the story is that they had heard that Sehwag is weak against the hook. And Sehwag used to sing to himself when he was batting. I mean, it's the ultimate insult to a bowler, right? And he used to sing really badly. And he would do reverse sledging for the bowlers. And so Shoaib Akhtar bowled some 5 balls to him right up to here in the test. And every time he'd come, he'd say, "Hook karna." The hook is a shot that you play this way. And he'd come back and say, "Hook karna." And then finally, when he did this for the 5th time, Sehwag said, "Yaar, tu bowling kar raha hai ki bheek mang raha hai?" Now that, by the way, separately, that same evening, they went out and had butter chicken and Rogan Josh and naan together. So remember that also. When you fight on the field with each other, at the end of the day, you're all friends. That is something that you must inculcate. Maybe there's inter-hostel rivalry here. Maybe there is the boys versus the girls, maybe debating society versus dramatic society, but you all represent MDI Gurgaon, right? So focus is very, very important in terms of why you're here and what your purpose out here is. You know, they say there are 2 tragedies in life. One is achieving your goals. The second one is not achieving your goals. I will tell you the story of Stephanie Rice, quadruple Olympic swimming gold medalist at the age of 19. Gorgeous, looks like Miss Universe if you meet her. Again, I met her at Bangalore. She was the brand ambassador for one of the marathons we were sponsoring. And by the age of 19, she had 4 gold medals. And she said, "My life is over." because everything that I've ever worked for in my life I've achieved. Now I don't know what to do. I want to kill myself. Because from the time I was 3, I've been swimming. And at 19, you'd think, boss, my life is just starting. Your biggest fear is I'm no longer a teenager. And she says, my life is over. So I asked her, what did you do? So she said, I went to Michael. If I tell it to you the surname, then you don't know who I'm talking about. She said, I went to Michael Phelps. And I asked him, because Phelps has been through a similar journey. He's performed over 5 Olympics, and he went into depression, and he gave up swimming and so on and so forth, and he started smoking marijuana and all that kind of stuff. And he came back even better and stronger than before. So she asked Phelps, and I thought this is an absolutely brilliant question to ask, Michael, how do I win when I've already won? What an amazing question. Unfortunately, our conversation got interrupted. I don't know what Michael said to her, but I do know this, that Michael Phelps and Grant Hackett, his 1500 meter swimming champion, Australian, his best friend from the last 20 years, have put together an academy that deals with mental conditioning and strengthening former world-class athletes and sportsmen who have fallen from their levels and are struggling to achieve the same level. And can you believe who was his first client? Tiger Woods. Can you imagine Michael Phelps training Tiger Woods? Immediately, about a year after that, Tiger Woods won his 15th major as a result of enrolling in this. So I don't know what he did. I wish I had known that, but how do I win when I've already won? So you get 100 in one paper, the next time 99 is defeat. Isn't it? What happened to Rajiv Gandhi? I mean, you guys were probably not born, or so if you were, you were certainly too young. Because the day he won the Lok Sabha elections in a margin that has never been replicated in history. Some 420 odd seats, I don't know how many. The problem with Rajiv Gandhi was he was already at his peak the day he became Prime Minister. There was no way but to go down. When you're world number 1, everyone wants to knock you off the block. When you're the best at what you do, whoever comes up against you has nothing to lose. The entire pressure is on you. Getting to number 1 is difficult, but staying number 1 is much, much tougher. Because every time you play, there's someone who's willing to die on the court to beat you. And you have to face that every day. Similarly, in the corporate world, the skills required to become a CEO are very different from the skills required to become a good CEO. 2 different skill sets. Maybe you have student elections here, I don't know, to become the students' union president. If you have one, it's not easy, but it's, once you become president, to deliver is far tougher. Right? So, focus, perseverance, courage, staying motivated. You need to find new goals to keep yourself motivated. So suppose you've topped in the first semester. You have a trimester system or a semester system? Trimester, you've topped in the first trimester. After that, the next time you come second, you'll feel I've lost. So you need to find new goals to motivate yourself and keep yourself going. Having the right resources is very, very important. You can't function in isolation. Teamwork, and as men, at least in our generation, we were taught, you learn to do yourself, everything yourself. Stop crying. Are you a girl? Are you a woman? All those kind of things were taught to us. Right? We should have been told, when you cried, instead of being said that, are you a woman? You should say, make sure women never cry. But that was a different time. But you need the right resources. So suppose you have to do, 3 of you have to do a project. You need maybe access to the auditorium, maybe you need access to the library, maybe you need computers, you need Wi-Fi, you need research material, maybe you need one of your professors to spend some time with you. When Muhammad Ali was asked, Muhammad Ali, the greatest, boxer, the greatest sportsman really of the 21st century, he used to run up and down the hills, and people used to ask him, man, how do you manage that? And he used to say very simply, it's not the mountains that tire you out, it's the stone in your shoe. So if you have a stone in your shoe, you can't run even 1 yard, forget about. So what he was saying was that he has a whole team that helps him get there. Today you see Virat Kohli being what he is. You think it's happened overnight? I've known that boy for 10 years. I've known him from the time he won his under 19, in fact even more than 10 years. He was completely out of control. His father just passed away. He had no guidance, no direction, nothing. Highly selfish players like Gavaskar and Tendulkar. I shouldn't be breaking all their bubbles, right? Those guys who do nothing for anyone saw so much talent in this guy And Vengsarkar bajawed him so much, he left him crying on the floor of the dressing room for 1 hour. He was crying like a baby. And the full credit to him to having accepted and taken that feedback and worked towards it. Today, the Virat Kohli that you see is most incredible sporting talent that I've ever seen any Indian to come out of. He's become, the amount of sacrifices he's made. He's turned vegan. You know, he was telling me, sir, I've not had one ice cream in 5 years. I haven't had a pizza in 5 years. I haven't had a milkshake, nothing. The amount of sacrifice. I haven't missed a training day in some 4 years. And so many, you see, you don't need to take my word for it. You see the way he's evolved in terms of even the way he handles. But do you think it's happened alone? He has a dietitian, he has a nutritionist, he has an endurance coach, he has a strength coach, conditioning coach, psychologist, psychiatrist, every possible thing. There's a whole battery. So you cannot ever achieve anything without the right resources. Make sure you're always resourced well. Perhaps the single most important advice that I would like to give you is you have to learn how to lose. Colonel Verma will tell you about battles that India lost. I'm talking about learning to lose in your life. You've already lost more than you've won. Already. How many MBA institutes did you apply to? How many did you get into? How many competitive exams did you sit for? How many did you get selected? How many jobs did you apply for? How many did you get? How many girls did you try to marrow line on, and how many actually even noticed that you were anything more than a fly on the wall? And similarly for the girls. So you've already failed more than you've won. But, and this is very critical from an Indian point of view, learn to disassociate your loss from your sense of self-worth. Because we are so consumed by our jobs and our profession that we don't exist outside that. Today, if a girl brings a boy home and says, "Maa, mujhe is ladke se shaadi karni," the first question the mother will ask, "Beta, ladka karta kya hai?" That's the first question. Means the job is the most important. Stability, monthly income will hopefully keep my daughter happy and look after her, right? अगर लड़का बोलेगा तो वो बोलेगी लड़की, माँ बोलेगी लड़की लंबी है, पतली है, गोरी है, खाना बनाना जानती है. Even today, what do you think is the percentage of arranged marriages in this country? Please tell me. 85%. 85% is the percentage of arranged marriages in this country. So the India that you grew up in is not necessarily the India that exists out here. There are many Indias out here. You just step out of MDI Gurgaon. This is not India. Just step outside and you see the old Jat boys say, "Ke taus yadro agyo." That is also one part of India. There are multiple realities in this country. Right? So learning how to lose is the single most important thing. And keeping your loss separate from your sense of self-worth. I may criticize you, which means I'm criticizing your work. I'm not criticizing you as a person. I'll still have a meal with you. But as Indians, we keep our work to define our entire sense of our self-worth. For the love of God, and I have done that in my life. I have thought when someone criticizes me, he's criticizing me as a person. The foreigners are very good at it, by the way. Their sense of self-worth is very different from the sense of being criticized or losing. Remember that. Sergio Zeman, former CMO of Coke, was fired for that new Coke disaster. You can read about it. 10 years later, he got hired back as the CMO of Coke. Which means what? Which means the competence was not under question. It was an incorrect decision that was made. And you think he was the only guy who made that decision? There would be 10 other people. But he was sacrificed. He was the sacrificial lamb. Success has many fathers, failure has none. You will learn this in the corporate world when you go there. But learning to lose is the story of Anthony Irwin, who at the age of 19 in the Sydney 2000 Games won the 50-meter sprint gold in a world record time. He was 19 years old. He suffered an enormous crisis of confidence, gave up competitive swimming for 9 years, came back 16 years later in the Rio Olympics, competed in the same event as a 35-year-old man, won the same 50-meter sprint gold in a time that was better than when he was 19 years old. It's an almost incredible, it's a superhuman feat. It's impossible to do. And there was this German motivational speaker called Jasmin Waldman who was writing a book and wanted to document his life. And he said, "You know what, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard." And I said, "Why, Tony? Your story is so inspiring." That he says, "What will people write? That I won when I was 19 and when I was 35? He says, "I've never lost in my life. How can I teach anyone anything until I've had the privilege of losing?" And I want to tell him, sir, आपके पैर कहाँ हैं, मुझे पकड़ने दो. Who talks like this, man? जब तक मैं कुछ हारा नहीं हूं, मैं आपको कुछ सिखा नहीं सकता हूं. He says, you come back to me when I've lost and then I will do the book. Because like I said to you, defeat teaches you much more than victory does. I'm conscious that we are running out of time. I'll try and speed it up another 5-10 minutes. Self-improvement. How would you react if I told you that the scores that got you into MDI Gurgaon, your first year students, your second year students? I heard third somewhere. Fail kaun hua hai bhaiya? First and second. How would you react if I told you that the scores that got you into MDI, whenever you got in, if you repeated the same scores next year, you wouldn't get in? How will you react if I told you that? If you repeat your performance, you will fail. India got 2 Olympic medals in the 2016 Olympics in Rio. In 2020, if we repeat our performance, we'll get 0. And I'll tell you the story of David Rudisha, double 800-meter Olympic champion, gold in the 2008 Beijing Games, gold in the 2012 London Games. And he improved his timing, if there are any athletes in the room, by 4 seconds in a 4-year period on an 800-meter distance, which is incredible. In 2012 London, he won in 1 minute 41 seconds. That's literally 100 seconds for 800 meters. That's 8 meters per second, which is from this side of this door to where the lady is standing in 1 second. In 1 second. And doing this for 100 seconds. So when I asked him, I said, David, why did you push yourself so hard? You were already the defending champion. You had won gold at the previous Olympics. He said, sir, if I had repeated the same time in 2012 that I ran the 2008 Olympics in, I would have come last. And do you know what? The guy who came last into 2012 Olympics ran a time that would have got him gold in Beijing. Self-improvement is the most important thing. You are not, our entire education system is wrong. Through history, through our education, we are taught to compete against everyone else. You're the best in this whole class. But how can you be the best when his or her life journey is completely different? Can your shoes fit his? I don't think so. Similarly, can your jacket fit hers? I don't think so. Yet here you are in the same latitude and longitude for 2 years of your life. The journeys that you have taken to come here are vastly different. So how can you be better than her or she be better than him? What did Alistair Cook say when he retired? Alistair Cook, 6'5", left-handed, looks like a Hollywood movie star, left-handed opening batsman for England. He said, you know what, I don't think I was the most talented cricketer. I mean, I think he's being modest. You don't get 10,000 test runs and score some 26 centuries without talent. But he says, I do believe that I became the best version of myself. That is what I would encourage you to do, to become the best version of yourself. I go to the gym, I run, I lift weights. I'm competing with myself, not with anyone else. There's always someone younger, slimmer, cooler, fitter, faster, more handsome, richer, more successful. That's not your competition, because you don't know what price that person has paid to reach where he or she has. Maybe you're not willing to pay that price. Maybe your journey is different. Who is better, a cricketer or a footballer? How do you compare? In this room, there is diversity of, some of you are vegetarians, some of you are non-vegetarians. Some of you like music, some of you like sports, some of you like current affairs, some of you like art and history and geography. How can you compare one with the other? You can only compare yourself with yourself. That's what we are taught in the gym. You compete only with yourself. You do not compete with someone else. And next year you'll be doing placement season, where indeed you will be competing with each other for that particular placement. But once you've gotten there, what then? The competition never starts. You'll be competing with someone else for promotions, for a plum assignment, for an overseas posting. When will it end? So never focus on that, because there's only disappointment there, man. Another piece of advice, never ever try to find out your colleague's salary. Never. If you're paid more, you'll feel guilty. If you're paid less, you'll feel terrible. So some things you better not know. Are you better today than you were yesterday? Will you be better tomorrow than you are today? That's the only way to go. The only way. Trust me, any other way, there's only disappointment. Do not compete with anyone else, compete with yourself. In fact, I think the education system should be changed to say most improved student. So someone came in at 20 and is now at 60, to my mind, is better than someone who came in at 50 and is now at 60. Because that person has had to probably put in more effort. Optics matter a lot, especially in the marketing world. Perception is reality. So if you think, some of you may think, I'm a reasonably well-dressed, reasonably distinguished person speaking reasonably good, then that's what I am. On the other hand, some of you may think, God, when will he shut up? This white-haired guy, why doesn't he just leave us alone and let me have my tea or whatever? Then that's what I am. So optics matter. When I met Carl Lewis, who to my generation was what Usain Bolt is to your generation, Carl Lewis, when he used to finish a race, he would always take one entire round of the stadium before coming to meet the television cameras. And all these guys would say, the guy's such an arrogant, you know, so-and-so. Here we are waiting for him, and he's like waving to his fans, and he's taking his own time to come here. So he was speaking to us in Bangalore, and I asked him, I said, why did you do that, Carl? He says, you know, growing up, all the athletes that I worship, people like Bruce Jenner, who's now Caitlyn Jenner, you know, I think, and, you know, people like Daley Thompson, etc., the world decathlon. He says, whenever they won, the moment the race was over, the mic was thrust in their faces, and they were asked, how was the race? He said, because he's out of breath. He says, I promised myself I would never let that happen to me. So he said, I would take a round of the stadium, wipe my sweat, get my breathing under control, and come and stand and give the interview. And they would say, Carl, how was the race? He says, it was great. I started strong, I held my speed, and I finished strongly. And he says, my opponents were so psyched because they thought not only has he defeated us, but he's not even out of breath. Optics matter. If you've seen the movie MS Dhoni, The Untold Story, what does he say? Where did we lose that match? On the basketball court, where they saw Yuvraj Singh. In fact, I talked to Yuvraj, he doesn't remember it at all, but that's a different matter. But he says that we lost the match on the basketball court. Okay, I'm almost at the end of it. I think being self-aware is very, very important. Like I said to you earlier, you know, your students from MDI Gurgaon, but the more senior you go in life, the more you achieve in life, the greater your responsibility, and that much more self-awareness in terms of what you may mean to someone else. Now today, you people have very kindly given me 60, 75 minutes of your lives. If I don't add value to those 60 or 75 minutes, then I'm failing in my duties. Right? Because you've given me your life, your time for that time. You remember that movie, Chuck there? He says, oh, 70 minutes. I can't do a Shah Rukh Khan. He said, na, khuda bhi tumse nahi chhin sakta hai. So being self-aware is very, very important. Again, Carl Lewis story. Carl Lewis says to me, you know, I'm the laziest guy on the planet. I just want to sleep from morning till evening, but I work for this boss who's a really hard-ass boss, and he kicks my backside out of bed every day, and he tells me, go and lead, go and motivate, go and inspire. And I said, Carl, who's your boss? He said, man, some guy called Carl Lewis. So he's so conscious of what the brand name Carl Lewis means, and the person Carl Lewis, how different, and the impact that he has there. You know, so being self-aware of who you are, what you represent is very, very important. And to close, I'm going to say being humble is the single most important thing today. You know, victory will come to you, you will achieve success and stuff like that. But if you're not humble, and you know what, the more famous you get, the harder you have to work at being humble. It's from a simple thing like calling out the waiter's name by name, not, or, none of that. I've seen that, right? We've seen that with well-to-do people as well. How much trouble is it to call the person by name? I guarantee you much better service if you do that, because they also deserve who stand and serve. How many of you know the names of all the servers in the canteen today? Make an effort to get to know. You know, how many of you thank the lift man when he opened the door for you? How many of you thank the taxi driver, Uber, Ola guy when you get out? How many of you, you know, my father's been married to my mother for 62, 38 and 58 years. Even today he pulls the chair out. He's an old British sister. He pulls the chair out for her when she sits down, opens the car door for her when she sits down. Deep personal secret. They live in Jaipur and it gets quite cold. And my father sleeps early because he wakes up to play golf in the morning. My mother watches all those terrible serials on TV every night. My father sleeps in my mother's side of the bed and warms it. When she's ready to go to bed, she just nudges him off and he moves to the other side so that she gets to sleep in a warm bed. Women have lower basal metabolic rates. And he's doing this after 58 years of marriage. Solid pressure on me, man. But the point is to say, learn to say, please, sorry, excuse me, thank you. How much does it cost you? It's the cheapest thing in the world to do. So being more and more humble, right? Today, Soradeep and offered to pick me up from my house. I said, no, I'll come on my own. You know, I only requested him that, you know, I'll arrive at lunchtime, so just feed me lunch. So the more successful you get, the more senior you get, the harder you have to try to be humble. And if you see the greatest leaders in the world, they're all like that. From Barack Obama, look, when you see, when you used to see Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Tim Cook, Mark Zuckerberg, look at those. Zuckerberg owns only 12 trousers, 12 blue jeans, and 12 gray t-shirt. That's it. No other clothes. How much money does he have? Jeff Bezos, you'll all see, of course, apart from the tamasha that he did here, but he's always in blue jeans and a white shirt. So there's no expensive jewelry, etc., no yachts, no all this stuff. So because today the times are very different. Your generation calls it out. No ostentatious display of wealth and power and stuff like that. But it needs to go deeper than that. It needs to come from you genuinely inside you. Now I know Pranav Langa's name, I know Sauradeep Sarkar's name, but how many other names do you recall? So be humble and work extra hard at being humble. You see the greatest sportsman, look at when Nadal plays, Djokovic plays, Federer. No matter how deep a fan of Federer you are, you still can't bring yourself to hate Nadal and Djokovic. That is the power they have. If you see them, I have seen Nadal defeat Federer and then say to Federer on the court side that, Roger, what you have done for me, my generation, and the game is something that I will never be able to repay you. This is after he's defeated him. I mean, look at the amount of respect they have for each other. Any big Federer fans here? Do you hate Nadal and Djokovic? Isn't that a mark of their greatness? That despite beating him more often than he's beaten them, you still can't bring yourself to hate them. So be like that. And to close, I will say India is a non-vegetarian country, regardless of what everyone makes you believe. So I think we are 65–70% non-vegetarian. So suck the marrow from life, but do not choke on the bone. Thank you so much.
I think I cannot even stress on the fact how amazing those stories and examples were. Thank you so much, sir, for this session.
Thank you.
We would ask Manoj Kumar Srivastav, sir, to felicitate sir with a token of appreciation from our side.
If I had known I was getting this, I would have come earlier here. Thank you. This is my second time at MDI, and every time I'm very, very grateful and very thank you so much. Sir. Thank you so much. Sir. Thank you. Thank you.